Ba-da-ba-ba, ba-da-ba-ba. All right. Promoter 101. Promoter 101. Promoter 101. Promoter 101. And Promoter 101. Promoter 101. Promoter 101. Promoter 101. Promoter 101.
Hey, this is Gino Shelton, and I'm on Promoter 101.
Hello, friends. Welcome to the Promoter 101 podcast. Joining me right now, live and in person, direct from his Nashville office, Mr. W. Luke Pierce.
Oh, thank you, Dan. So glad to be here on this warm and sunny September day here in Music City, Tennessee. I'm looking forward to this episode of Promoter 101, Dan, because in episode 184 ahead of us, we are keeping it rocking. We got some amazing guests coming up as we close out the final episodes, and today is no different. We have Buck Williams from PGA. We're going to be talking with him, diving into his historic career, from widespread panic to R.E.M.
Plus, Live Nation's Northern California president, Jodi Goodman, is turning the tables on, well, me.
Episode 184, Promoter 101, coming at you right now.
This is Jason Flom,
John Valentino,
Jesse Lundy,
Dan Smalls,
David Simone,
Ant Taylor,
Natalia,
Harvey fucking Leeds here
on Promoter 101.
The word has leaked. It's true. The podcast is coming to an end fast, but you can join us for that final interview in person in Nashville, Tennessee, Music City, baby, at the IEBA conference.
We'll be doing our final interview and a final episode of this podcast on the keynote dais at IEBA. That's October 27th to 29th at the JW Marriott here in Music City, Tennessee. We're looking forward to wrapping up this podcast with so many of our friends in attendance. It's going to be a very special one. And if you haven't already registered, hit up IEBA.org. Grab your passes today.
As everyone knows, we've teamed up with the Grammys Music Cares Foundation. That's the Recording Academy people, to do a little good for some good people. So you can check it out by buying a t-shirt or a hoodie. 100% of the money that you donate goes directly to Music Cares, and the guys at Prism are going to match it. So 200% of the money that you spend is going to go to Music Cares. $20 for a t-shirt, $50 for a hoodie. Go to promoter101.net/merch and pick something out for us right now and do some good for some good people. And hey, thank you to everyone for posting the pictures. Vince Bannon, the one that you just put up, is awesome. We love seeing everybody post those pictures of you and your awesome swag when you get it from Promoter 101. Keep it up.
Absolutely. And special thanks to our friends at Prism for that $10,000 matching donation to Music Cares. An amazing cause, an amazing partner in Prism. So thank you again. Hit it up, promoter101.net/merchandise. Grab yourself a t-shirt, grab yourself a hoodie. Help this amazing cause.
If you want to talk to us, just send us an email, Steiny@promoter101.net. We were happy to respond to you.
Day or night, hit us up. We're always on social media. Join the conversation. Follow us on Twitter. I'm at W. Luke Pierce, Dan's at The Jew, and this show is Promoter 101.
You can also find us on Instagram. The show is Steiny @Promoter 101. Luke is W. Luke Pierce, and I am Dan Presents.
Of course, on Facebook. We're on Tumblr as well. We're on the World Wide Web, and now where all the cool kids are, LinkedIn. Check us out, Promoter 101.
Promoter 101.
Hey, it's Gary Witt from the Pabst Theater Group on Promoter 101.
Dan, I'm going to miss these birthdays. Let's celebrate them. September 10th to 16th, we got some people who we need to wish well this week, Dan. Who do we got?
Tuesday, 9/10, Michelle Donovan, Nick Littman, Jill Wheeler, Jonathan Ramos, and Peter Davis.
On Wednesday, 9/11, we've got the Triple Doors, Scott Giampino, Paul Emery, and Mammoth Live's Jeff Fortier, all celebrating birthdays.
Thursday, 9/12, talking Kevin Brady, talking Mike Palm, Ross Dupree, and Ben Spritz.
On Friday the 13th, Friday the 13th this year, Dan, we are celebrating some birthdays on the unluckiest of days. Wishing a reluctant happy birthday to Steve Ozark, Corey Christopher Martin, and Mike Hayes. I hope you have good luck that day.
Saturday, 9/14, Bill Carlton.
Sunday, 9/15, we're wishing a happy birthday to Joe Litvag, Jane Bees, and all the way over in the Ukraine, Renatas Nikuzis.
Monday, 9/16, Jason Wright of Live Nation Chicago will sell you the whole seat, but you'll only need the edge.
Wonderful wishes to everybody from the whole gang here at Promoter 101.
I'm Sarah Hartman. I work for AG Berlin as Senior Director Booking, and I'm on Promoter 101.
Promoter
101 Flashbacks.
Episode 57.
Joe Atamian.
We talk about the early days with the Lumineers because this is a next album cycle and they continue to grow and get bigger and bigger. You guys' success in New York was multiple sellouts this year at Madison Square Garden. But going back to Colorado and the earlier days and how quickly that happened, because they went from zero to like headlining radio shows pretty quick. They were on big festivals. Like that song caught like no one could have ever expected.
Yeah, it was definitely a quick one. You know, obviously a song like that it happens very rarely. And it's even more rare for an act to follow it up and continue to grow their touring business, especially coming off a song like that. But yeah, I mean, early days, you know, it was, again, they were grinding as well. They were out playing. I mean, I saw them, the first time I saw them was at Hotel Utah in San Francisco. And there was, 20 people there. So they were out doing their thing, before they had an agent. They were booking all their own shows, before they had a manager, before they had a label. They were out there trying to do it.
Amazing ride to watch that happen so quickly and be on those big stages. But over the course of the year, I've seen them 7-8 times over the course of the last couple of years. And you can see them as a young artist developing from a club band into developing into an arena act that knows how to own that stage. And that's not something that happens in 10 shows. That's something that has to happen over the course of 100 to 300. And then you become a Tom Petty where you've got that 5,000 shows of knowing what facial expressions are going to get the audience up. And those guys are really, really picking that up. You can see that development every time you see them.
Yeah, there was 2 distinct moments that it was actually funny because one of them was this summer. They opened for Dave Matthews Band in Charlottesville on that first record cycle when Dave was doing an arena tour. And at that show, I remember watching, them getting a standing ovation in Dave's hometown where no one could really give a fuck.
That's high praise.
Exactly. So watching that show and being like, okay, they can play arenas. And then this summer, it was almost the exact same thing watching them with U2, where by the end of the set, everybody's standing and, the place is 80% full, and it was like, okay.
Because when you go to a U2 show, you're not really caring who support is, although they've done a good job of you guys in Mumford and bringing real support.
Yeah, but it's, it's been a while since I'd been to a U2 show, and I forgot how crazy rabid their fans are, just about them in general.
And probably half that crowd is only going to go to that one show that year. Like, this is not your average going crowd. There are a lot of soccer moms in that are only going to that show.
Yep, definitely.
That's paying for the babysitter show.
Yep, no, for sure. And it was definitely a good response. And that's just, another one of those signs that they're still going the right direction, for sure.
I'm Gary Smith from Polestar, and you're listening to Promoter 101.
It's time to turn the tables. It's time to turn the
tables. Kicking things off on this, the 184th episode of Promoter 101, we are going to turn the tables. Joining us now, the president of Live Nation Northern California, Jodi Goodman's here to turn the tables on Steiny.
Jodi, do you have a turn the tables question for me?
Oh, for sure. I, and probably many others, have to, I would think, ask themselves, so Steiny, what made you want to do this? Like, were you just sitting around one day in your boxers or whatever, going, I just love our industry. It's so cool, and I just love the people in it. There's so many interesting people. It would be so cool to, hear their stories, and wait a minute, maybe I should call them up and just find out what their story is if I'm not interested. Oh, wait, maybe other people care. I don't know. It just fascinated me. What made you do it?
Well, the Reader's Digest version, because it's long, but panels started to happen where I was asked to do panels and I was kind of a shining star on them because they can be kind of boring. I always kind of thought, have some fun. Who gives a fuck? People are bored if they're asked, wake them up a little bit, and got moved from being on the panel to being the moderator. And from when they gave me a chance to moderate, I decided I don't want to ask the same question or let people introduce themselves. I want to run it a little bit more formal with, I'm going to find out who you are. I'm going to talk to you in advance and learn about you and ask questions that are exciting. So when people leave, they're like, I didn't know that about them, and I've sat next to them for 20 years, which is always the best thing you can possibly hear. Asking real questions, moving it faster, keeping it exciting, and asking fun questions, and try to trip people up and maybe throw a little bit of booze in the middle of that. So some of those were happening. It'd be cool is if you do a one-on-one. And Aspen Live has always been my favorite conference. Jim Louie said to me, you can do anything you want for an hour. Can I invite Steve Martin? He's got the best fucking stories.
He does.
And Steve said to me, if we're going to do this, we're not just going to do this cold. We're going to spend some time over the next 9 months and trade stories and figure out what are stories that are good enough for that room. Because I know who's in that room and I want this to be good. I'm like, okay, Steve, I'll spend time with you over the next 9 months. This sounds like a terrible thing for my career. And we had lunches and phone calls and emails and texts. And I was like, this is fucking brilliant. And most of the stories I got from Steve were, this isn't for anyone else, just for you. I talk to him, then I take notes, and then I turn it into questions. And I spent 9 months writing this. And it was a ball. And I was like, wow, he told me everything I wanted to know. And then I was like, who are you going to do next year? I'm like, next year, right. And I turned to Jamie Loeb and I was like, I wonder if Alex would come to Aspen. And she was like, yes, let's get Alex Hodges to come to Aspen. And Alex said the same thing. We got to spend time together. I'm like, okay. From there, it was like, what else do you want to do? And I started realizing, I can get Mike Luba and Shappy and Andrew Druskin to come talk to me about the dead and selling fucking to Pandora. Okay, let's see if I can get Jay to come in. Jay agreed to do it if we took the year to get to know each other better. We'll figure out what we were going to do. I was like, I get a year to talk to who now is one of the 2 biggest competitors in my business. And I don't know that he saw me as a competitor, but certainly saw AEG as a competitor. And now I get to ask any questions of my competitor at the highest level. The second Jay had a microphone, and me realizing he was going to have a mic in his hand, I was like, I need to record this. Have to record this. So I sent him a note. I'm like, thinking about starting a podcast. I would really love to record the interview. Would you be okay with that? Before we ever started, we had Jay on board. It's like, what can we do for the first one? We got to do this before we do it live, right? How about, oh my God, CA there's a book about CA that just came out just this week. This is 3 years ago, right? I'm like, who would be great to follow that up the same week? Tom Ross would be just the best first guest ever. He was like, I don't see why not. I started to get the idea, maybe there's some other people that might be into this. And okay, there's some things. What I did miss was along the way, I started doing some tweeting along the way. People are starting to really like the Promoter 101 hashtag, and they were building up. And I was like, okay, every competitor I have will take a microphone and I can ask them anything I want and they'll tell me. I started to see this as a really cool asset. And then I started to realize people were listening. It was like, okay, I thought like me and Luke would have 6 people listening and my mom. And it turned out there was an audience for this. There were students and there were people booking clubs and young agents and young managers and fanagers. And surprisingly enough, the industry itself started to listen, which shocked the shit out of me.
Wow. Dan, really? Jesus Christ. I'm so glad I asked that question.
That's how that came to be.
Man, well, now I realize I need to go back to Aspen.
We are so excited to share our full interview with Jodi coming up on episode 185 of Promoter 101. Talk about a masterclass. You are in for it, friends.
This is Andrea Johnson from ICM Partners, and you're listening to Promoter 101.
Dan, it's Monday, so that means we've got a new Promoter 101 Badass of the Week. Who should we be congratulating this week, Dan?
Well, there are very few people in the world deserving to being a Promoter 101 Badass twice, but Bobby Cudd of William Morris Endeavor, definitely deserving of maybe even being a triple hat trick Badass of the Week. But it goes out to him this week. Great people. Gotta love him. Bobby Cudd, my mentor and friend. Giving it up for him this week is Promoter 101's Badass of the Week.
Indeed, Bobby is very deserving of this. If we could give it to him 3 times, I think we would. And maybe one day we'll just have to celebrate at 400 degrees. There was some hot chicken here in Nashville with Bobby. And I can't wait because that means we get to post my favorite photo, Bobby Cudd, on the Travel Channel, talking about the best hot chicken in Nashville. What an appropriate photo for this Promoter 101 Badass of the Week.
Bobby Cudd.
Bobby Cudd.
We are thrilled to announce that Promoter 101 has teamed up with the Recording Academy's Music Cares Foundation to do a little good. And you, our beloved listeners, can help. By going to Promoter101.net and clicking the merch tab at the top of the page, you can pick up a stylish, limited edition Promoter 101 Call Ya Mother t-shirt or hoodie in a huge variety of styles and colors. 100% of proceeds goes directly to Music Cares and their mission to provide a safety net of critical assistance for music people in their time of need. Shipping and handling is absolutely free, and for the first $10,000 we raise, our good friends at Prism are matching donations dollar for dollar. Go to Promoter101.net right now, click on the merch tab, pick out one of our awesome shirts, and be the heart and soul of the music community by donating to Music Cares. And don't forget to call your mother.
Joining us for a featured interview this week, we have PGA's Buck Williams. This is an agent who's been in the business for almost 30 years, a historic career spanning several decades. He's worked with some amazing acts from R.E.M. to Widespread Panic, who just celebrated 3 sold-out nights here at the Ryman Auditorium in Nashville, Tennessee. Please welcome to the podcast, PGA's Buck Williams.
Buck Williams, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Let's do a little history, and then we'll go backwards.
Okay.
FBI, possibly the coolest agency in the 80s. You guys had everybody. How did you and Ian Copeland come together?
Ian came to work for Paragon Agency in Macon, Georgia, part of the Phil Walden empire.
Alex Hodges days.
Alex Hodges days, yep. His brother Miles had suggested that we hire him. We were working with Climax Blues Band and a couple other of Miles's acts. And Ian, who had never really been to the United States, he was in Vietnam and then went to England, working out of England doing booking. And he had to get out of England because he hadn't paid any taxes for years. So Miles suggested we interview him. So Alex sent me to have lunch with Ian, and he and I got along famously for the first second that we met, having lunch at Mama Lowe's, and we hired him. And after Capricorn Records folded in 1980, whatever it was, 1 or 2, Ian and I were going to start an agency. We were going to take our acts, an Atlanta rhythm section, a couple things that I have, and he had to police and squeeze, and move to Atlanta and start an agency.
Before you go on real quick, obviously 3 Copeland brothers, Miles, Stewart, Ian, IRS Records, FBI booking, where you're about to go, obviously, and the police. Were the police already big before Miles and Ian came up? Because obviously Miles broke first in the industry before Ian did. So the police came later.
Yeah.
So Miles made his way first.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, it all comes from the father, Miles Sr., who was one of the leading founding guys of the IRS. And Ian was born in Damascus.
And when you say IRS, you mean IRS Records. You don't mean the IRS here.
I mean the IRS, yes. Middle East. He was in charge of the Middle East. Not IRS, CIA, excuse me. CIA, not IRS.
The actual CIA.
The real CIA.
Oh,
yeah, he was one of the founding members of the CIA.
Okay. So that meeting of the names actually have even more of a irony.
Yeah, Ian was born in Beirut and grew up in Damascus. That's why he had never really been to the U.S., because they were Middle East. Family's from Birmingham, Alabama.
Originally?
Yeah.
Fascinating.
Yeah. So back to how FBI started. Capricorn Records went out of business and took Paragon with it. As a matter of fact, they bled Paragon, which was doing very well, paying the Capricorn staff with their outrageous salaries and all. Ian and I were going to start an agency, as I said. We were going to do that in Atlanta. I had 2 kids, Hunter and Sarah, 1 and 3 years old. Ian went to New York and met Jane Friedman, a publicist up there, and he called me from New York and said, Buck, it's got to be New York. It can't be Atlanta with what we're doing. After we talked for a minute, we talked about what would we do with the Atlanta rhythm section, some other things that I had on a roster with the Police and Squeeze, who didn't even have a record deal at the time, but they were really, really under the radar. But the coolest thing out there, I said, I agree, it'll be New York, but I can't come right now. So he asked me, who am I going to take up there? Don Braxley or John Huey? I said, that's a no-brainer. You take John Huey up there, and I'll come up in a year or so. But I have to straighten myself out with my kids and all, because it was a shot in the dark, so to speak. You know, there was no guarantee.
You were small kids. You don't want to relocate everything.
Yeah, so that's how it began. Went up to New York. I came up there about a year and a half later. He and I were talking all the time. I was helping him with his money, what to do with it. And so I went over there. When I went up there, I went up as a partner and became the guy that ran the money, so to speak, as well as a booker. He wrote a book. He had a really, really bad back, and he had an operation on his back that went wrong. And now the operation, which was injecting the yucca plant into his disc or something, is now outlawed. And that's when he was writing his book, Wild Thing.
I remember his book coming out. That was what, mid-'90s or early 90s?
Yeah, mid. It was on Simon & Schuster. And anyway, he wasn't really going to work. So I basically took over running the office up there while he was recuperating. Then he went to L.A. when Courtney got her break and we opened a actor division.
Courtney Cox?
Yeah.
Springsteen video, right?
Yeah, Springsteen video. She was working for us.
Yeah, you just went right past that. That's a huge part of the story. She was like an assistant, right, or something early on?
Well, she wasn't. Yeah, she was a floater.
Okay. But she worked in the office.
Yeah, for 6-8 years. Yeah, for a long time.
And there was like a Springsteen video that she got cast, right?
Springsteen video, yeah, that she got. And the two girls up there, they didn't say, okay, you're going to be picked by Bruce. That was all a surprise things for the moment he pointed at Cece, and she went up there, and that kind of broke her. Yeah.
Okay, so L.A. happened.
Yeah. You know, the roster, Ian and I had a great relationship. We were partners. He was a senior partner, of course. But he was the personality. He had been to Vietnam. He was a Copeland. He was a storyteller. He's the funniest, nicest guy on the planet. He was a personality. And I was the mechanic. And that's how we looked at it. And when we went up there, that was the agreement we had. I don't like to do press things. I don't like, I just like to work and get things done. Ian loved being out under the lights and in the spotlight. So he goes sign acts, and we would figure out a way to make them work.
Okay, so when the agency was happening, it was really happening. I mean, you talked about Huey, but let's talk about the fact that Steve Ferguson, Andy Summers, Lisa Miller, like
John Ditmar.
Yeah, the list goes on, right? It's huge.
Yeah.
The talent that you guys discovered as an agency with young agents that have all turned out to be amazing agents.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Is incredible.
Well, we had a different philosophy, a different way of doing things, and that's we gave people freedom to do things. It wasn't so structured as Premier or ICM or the other major. There was no CAA. William Morris was, stuck up in suits. It was Wayne Forte.
And Mike Farrell, right?
Yeah, who basically were competing for the same bands.
And Mike and Wayne were paying attention to Europe in a much different way. Although Premier seemed to be over
Premier
there too.
but Premier was, and they were Premier. I mean, they started it all. Frank Barcelona really started the touring business to some degree. But we were taking a shot on bands that didn't have record deals. It later evolved into, when Flock of Seagulls or Thompson Twins or XTC actually came earlier, but they came over with record deals. But it was but when we first brought the Police and Squeeze over, there were no record deals, and nobody could come from Europe without a record deal. And we went and found the young promoters that were hungry. When a Jack Boyle in Washington, D.C. said, who were you talking about? Call me later, wouldn't take the call. We called Seth Hurwitz, and that Danny Eaton. We called the people that the major agencies weren't talking with. And that's who, built out that John Stoll. And they grew with the bands.
So just like Frank had built out the Frank Barcelona network, you guys had built out the alternative network.
So to speak, yeah.
That's kind of interesting. So you guys are finding acts, the other guys, the big guys, the A's, maybe the Barry Fays and the Bill Grahams were too busy doing the acts that are already playing the big theaters and amphitheaters to take shots.
Yeah, Bill Graham had Ken Freeman. Ken became competition. And Larry Vallon we sold to, because Avalon wasn't paying attention. And we found all these people who were promoters on a small scale, but they had the vision.
You developed the competitors.
Yeah. It was an alternative network, so to speak.
Which would make sense because you had the alternative bands.
Yeah. Yeah.
The thing I love about FBI's roster is the bands that were on them. And it's easy to look back now and like, what an incredible fucking roster. I mean, you can look at the Police and some of the other amazing bands that were on that roster.
R.E.M.
Absolutely.
And Bill Berry was our office boy.
Really?
Yeah.
There you go. If you look back now, my God, look at that roster. But you can look back at early days of Lollapalooza lineups, like when they were running around the country and go, oh my God, all those bands toured together. But they weren't those bands yet. They hadn't developed into that.
Yeah.
They were young, upcoming bands. You guys were finding this talent early on before anybody knew it was talent.
That's right, yeah. Well, once we had Police and Squeeze, the phone started ringing from Europe. There were bands where record companies would say, don't bring them over, and they really wanted to come to the U.S., but it cost so much to come over. They were coming over with us and going back in the black, not in the red. They weren't in debt. So we created that network where bands could come over here without records, without airplay, and go back. And that really put us on the map.
So at your peak, you guys had Police doing what, arenas?
Stadiums.
They were doing full-on stadiums.
Yes. Synchronicity last tour was stadium tour.
Okay, so stadium tour with that. R.E.M. was pretty much, they really never did stadiums, right? It was arenas and festivals.
No. They did stadiums all over the world. They're much bigger in Europe than they were here in the U.S.
But in the States, there was arenas for multiples,
Yeah,
right?
they were 60, 80,000 people sold out in advance everywhere.
Okay, and they do the amphitheaters a lot here in the States, right?
No, we do 3 gardens, 4 arenas, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. In 95, when they came back on Monster, after they'd been off and came back with the Monster Tour, everything was multiples.
That's incredible.
Yeah, everything was multiples.
So MTV was just huge for a ton of your acts.
Yeah.
They went from doing club and theater business to a lot of those acts blew up into arena acts with the day of the videos. Like your acts in particular, that FBI roster exploded with MTV, like the ability to do videos and reaching people on both radio and TV.
It was a great tool between MTV and college radio, CMJ. We had a way of getting out because both of them were alternative and our bands were alternative. And when regular commercial celestial radio wasn't playing until you were really good, you know, they didn't want anything to do with the Police or anything with the in front of it. It was considered punk. And it really was back then. It came from Europe and it had the in front of it. It's punk, no matter what it sounded like. With MTV, when you look at their early playlists with Oingo Boingo and the Police and R.E.M. and Joan Jett and I'd seen before the Bangles, but Go-Go's, and I mean that was our roster.
I don't know that anybody was more benefited as an agency in this business than MTV coming along than you guys.
Well, when they had their first New Year's Eve party, where did they come? They came to us. MTV did. And we gave them the Police tour, Synchronicity tour. They toured with the Police. Cameras even went in the dressing rooms, but it was following the Police around.
You guys are finding these acts and you're breaking them. That's the trick, right? Finding an act that's talented, you can do. You can do today, you could do back then. Finding an act that has the ability to write a good song that can perform live is possible. But breaking an act and getting people to actually pay attention and see it and break through the white noise, that's the trick. You guys had a lot of success with that.
We did. We didn't have our hands tied. We weren't dependent on anything but ourselves and the acts. And they listened back then. We like to say R.E.M. did it the R.E.M. way. The Police did it the Police way. And it wasn't the A&M way or the IRS way, although IRS was very much in sync with us. They had Wall of Voodoo and English Beat, and you know they had a great roster themselves.
I would imagine that if there was something that the Police wanted, a brother could call a brother and make sure he could get through some red tape if that ever got in the way.
You know, I don't even know if that ever happened.
I would assume that would have been a daily thing.
No, I mean, we were in sync, total sync, but we knew at that time how to get to the audience with the promoters we were using. And it was kind of underground. It was different. It was really working. It wasn't like today where you call a promoter, the promoter says, okay, and you can go over to marketing that goes over to somewhere else. And the promoters generally became buyers. They really weren't promoting. They had hired people, big staffs to do the promoting for them. And that's what a lot of the bigger promoters were doing, where the little promoters were doing it themselves. They were getting out and getting into coffee shops or record stores or wherever.
So I was reminded today that my first show with PGA was sold to me by Brian Hill, and it was an act you were the RA for. It was the Specials, and I promoted them in Denver in, I don't know, maybe 93. And I remember the day the show confirmed, Brian had called and said, band has always played for the other promoter in the market. You guys do all the other shows in the genre at this point. Don't make us regret this. This is a huge, huge thing. And after the show played, and we sold the date out, and I had called Brian, and I was so proud of how great the show went, and sold out, and just a beautiful date. And I was like, dude, thank you guys for taking a chance on me. And he had said, you know, this is how we break bands, and this is how we keep bands, is we play for the right promoters, we play for the right venues. This is what this agency's always been about, is finding the right place for the act, not necessarily just sticking him in and playing what we've done in the past, but finding the right play for the act. That's the thing we do. Has that always been the philosophy, is making sure you're doing the right thing for the act?
The formula was not having a formula. Do what is specific to every band, different. Although we were doing the same thing, but we were following the trail of what the artist wanted and trying to get there in the way we knew how to get there. So our formula changed with different acts. You know, radio bands did a little bit different from like you said, the Specials came over here with no product. Well, after English Beat disbanded, became Fine Young Cannibals and General Public, and then that kind of broke off. The Specials broke up, but we put together the Special Beat.
It's all very incestuals with all those guys.
And, Specials and the Beat with Frank and Roger, and it was an amazing. We toured them everywhere with no record. Never had a record deal.
Didn't have to. You had all the different hits from the different bands.
And it was great.
Right. They had a fan base.
Yeah. We kind of helped them create a base. And, that if you don't know who they are, you're not going to pay to see them. So it does take marketing. It does take educating of what is a Special Beat. But we had ways of doing it back then that don't even exist right now.
What doesn't exist?
Well, you don't have college radio that you can get into right now.
Right, and not to say that it doesn't exist. It just isn't programmed the same way.
Yeah. It kind of went away, and it didn't exist on a lot of campuses for a while. It sort of went away, and it came back, and it was with really not the power. And then you didn't have colleges really don't do shows now like they used to do. Universities and colleges were promoters. I mean, Duke University was the major promoter in Central North Carolina for a while.
Now, the fact that schools had a budget to basically burn, it was part of the budget for the year. They didn't have to necessarily make money in most cases.
Well, yes and no. What happened to those budgets is us agents burned them out. I mean, if a band would come to us and say, well, we've got to play a university, we've got to play a festival, we've got to make this money, and they weren't worth the tickets. So we would take a $5,000 act and demand $10,000, hypothetically,
right,
getting twice the money from a university, which had rookie buyers for the most part.
Right, you're dealing with children that didn't know any better, and they maybe got excited by the whole process.
And I'm not talking about us at FBI, but us collectively as
the industry.
We burned them out. There's still universities doing it. They still have committees, but John Huey, that's how I met him. He was buying at Davidson. Scott Clayton was buying at UVA. That's where I met these people, was buying talent.
And you realize there was a flair there with those guys.
Yeah. And when people would come to me and ask me, how do you get started? Because I'd take a meeting with just about anybody, still do, that wants to get in the business and give them my advice, which is only worth what it's worth. But I would say, if you're getting into college, get on your council, get on your student council that buys talent. Get in there and start talking to agents. You learn about how to buy, how to sell. You're doing both sides of it. You got to sell tickets. You got to buy talent.
Let's jump ahead to PGA forming. How did that come about?
Ian and I split up after we merged the company with a company called Intertalent, which folded after about a year. It was a film company that needed music, and we were a music company that needed film. And basically, they got overextended. I wasn't moving to L.A. I was coming to Nashville with Intertalent. Matter of fact, we had spoken with John Huey about coming with us, but we never could get Intertalent off its feet. I was in New York at the time. Ian was in L.A. Intertalent fell apart. Ian and I wasn't going to L.A. He wasn't coming back. We were too distant to really continue. So we basically split the roster. And I told him I'm coming to Nashville. I wish he could come with me, but he couldn't. So he took Sting and I took R.E.M. and what I had. Came here with Monterey, took over the Monterey Peninsula office here in Nashville, which didn't work out for me. So I decided to open my own shop. I came down here, and the staff down here, great people, but they just didn't get what I do. And it was hard to get them to do what I do.
They were in an agency formula, and you were always in the do whatever you want formula to make it happen.
The agency doing country music, and some of it wasn't very hip country music. And they really don't do tours. They put weekends together, maybe connect them. And that wasn't what I do. So I'm sitting here with Specials and Oingo Boingo and Widespread Panic.
The country had to seem a little foreign to you, I'd imagine, moving down here. I mean, I know you come from Macon, but did you have a history in country music?
No.
So moving to Nashville, jumping into that agency had to be a little new.
I was coming down here. My first band, I think, that I was responsible for at Paragon was Charlie Daniels' band. Had a good relationship with Joe Sullivan, and who was managing Charlie. Anyway, this looked like a place that had a void, and the void was rock and roll.
You were 30 years ahead of the curve, sir.
So, well, not 30, but I was the first one that really brought a roster down here. And I was paying so much tax, living in Connecticut, working in New York. Taxes were killing me. Staff was expensive. you work really hard and you don't take anything home, not literally nothing, but you come to Tennessee, standard of living is higher, cost of living is lower, doing something that's new and fresh. The people here liked what I was doing, how we did it. Rock and roll was big and country was on the cusp, but it hadn't broken yet. I mean, maybe Randy Travis or a couple of things that had hit the pop charts, but not much.
Mandrills, what have you?
Maybe. I can't remember. There wasn't much. It was a handful. So coming down here, the promoters weren't buying down here at all. They were not buying country music. They were doing fairs there were obviously promoters that were doing country music, but they were mostly country music promoters. But the Electric Factory, Cellar Door, Jam, those people weren't doing it. When country music started breaking, they didn't have an in with country music either.
I seem to remember this. Like Kenny Rogers, Dolly Parton would tour together, and it wouldn't be Barry that would do it in Denver. It would be the national guy that was just the country guy.
Yeah.
I totally forgot about that history.
So I made a connection with Arnie Grant and some of these people, and it got to Rick Shipp and some other, and we started
the mainstream local promoters
country
into
music with rock and roll promoters.
Okay, that makes a whole lot of sense. The industry needed to evolve.
Yeah.
And you saw that. So when you said Ian had loved to do the interviews and he was the flash side of that and you were the mechanic and the money side of that, I get it. You could see it right there. You moved here, it was cheaper, the taxes were easier, paid staff less, and at the same time, there was a void here. That all backs that up. That's exactly right.
The only thing that was shock to me is I lived in Connecticut, Darien, Connecticut, with the best school systems in the world up there, public school. And I moved out here and said, this ain't working, and I had to go to private schools. There was a difference. Private schools were expensive. It's like starting off in universities.
that was the thing.
That's where the shock
Not the same school district, huh?
Yeah.
Okay, so you're here, and you've been here a while now, right?
Yeah, 92.
So PGA, you've got your own agency. You've got R.E.M., who's continuing to have great success. Widespread Panic really starts to have success. How'd they come into your life?
Well, R.E.M., like I said earlier, Bill Berry was our office boy at Paragon. When putting R.E.M. together, he and Mike, who I'm extremely close with right now, he has a project out I'm working with, he would call and say, well, will you help us here? Will you help us there? Ian loved Mike and Bill. And they loved Ian's music. We would go back in the mail room and roll a joint, listen to the Ramones or listen to the Sex Pistols or listen to something that you can't hear, on radio. And they just dug it. So when the band got together, they wanted to be on FBI. So Ian, of course, took them on. When I went to FBI, they became my client.
Now, there's an act that didn't break in a traditional way.
No.
There was no radio single. There was no music video.
Matter of fact, they couldn't understand anything Michael was saying. It was, yeah.
The groundswell for them, and I realize this is possibly the slowest build in the history of touring bands, but they have turned into one of the most loyal followings in music. 3 sold-out nights at Red Rocks. That were at the R.E.M, and they're going to do 3 nights here. But the band has an amazing following. Widespread, in particular, had just a ton of success in building it by touring and playing, and in a Grateful Dead kind of manner, or Allman Brothers manner, doing it live on the road and building your fan base live in shows. But different format than a lot of acts. I know there's a million jam bands now, but they were doing it when there weren't a lot of acts doing it, and they built up slowly but yet surely.
That's right. And right now they're as hot as they've ever, matter of fact, probably hotter than they've ever been. The band's no longer touring. We're just doing dates. The philosophy that we all share is geared around a marriage. It's kind of like a marriage. You've got a fan, you've got a band, and we have to take care of the fan, and the fan looks after us. So we don't just play anywhere and do anything to make dollars. We go where we know people want to go. It works. It wouldn't work for everyone, but it works for Widespread Panic.
Why do you accredit their longevity to?
I think dedication to themselves, what they're doing, paying attention to all of us working together and coming up with plans of how we're going to maintain a relationship with our fan base. That's basically what it is maintaining that relationship with your fan base. Not selling out to record companies. Again, doing it the way Widespread Panic does.
Now, going back to R.E.M., one of the biggest bands in the world. I mean, they're clearly destined for the Hall of Fame.
They're in the Hall of Fame.
Exactly. So when you're talking about a band like that, now, they never officially broke up, right? They're just on hiatus?
They're no longer touring. but they're re-releasing product, remastered vinyl.
I mean, you assume if they ever went back out, that'd be a stadium tour.
Oh, you wouldn't believe the offers that are unsolicited offers that come through weekly.
Yeah, imagine festival offers just coming constantly, just blindly.
Yeah, they're festival buyers that you know well that are checking in on a monthly basis.
Would you?
They maintain that they'll never tour again.
Everybody's hopeful that maybe a night sometime.
You know, I don't know what never means. It never can mean never. Never can mean it's just not foreseeable. Or people have minds. They have the rights, and they have the right to change their mind, and they have the right to stick with what they said.
You've got an amazing roster. Every one of your acts is amazing live. In a time that necessarily it's a lot of acts that could make a video and break a single and be on the road, were able to do that, and a lot of those bands weren't very good. Your acts always seem to be.
That's what we do. I'm an agent, and I also manage some bands as well, but basically I'm an agent, and that's we cater. I mean, you have to have a good live show in order to sell tickets. And I always would tell bands there's a difference when you have a band come over, particularly from England, that has A&M or whoever supporting their tour and doing this, that, and the other. And I would explain to management and the bands early on that we have two different missions. They're out to sell records. We're out to sell tickets. And we have to marry those two. We can't do everything they say. We can't go to every birthday party and do all their free shows with the promise of getting played at 2 o'clock in the morning or something. You can't do that. But nor can you piss them off.
So you got to find that happy middle ground.
So we've got to find a way to not do everything they want to do, but make them happy. Not only a compromise, it's being invented. They're coming up with something like going in and offering the radio station to do something for them when you're coming to town that wasn't their party, that they can say, what, are you kidding? I'd love to do that. I mean, I had R.E.M. at XRT. We were up there doing 3 days at wherever it was. I don't know if it was Aragon or theater or what. And I called Norm up there. I said, Norm, I'm in town. We're off. I got a band. I got sound and lights. Do you want to have a party? He said, are you kidding me? I said, no. Go to the Riv and have at it.
There's a win.
Yeah. And we would do that with clubs, with other bands. We would do that in places that would really stimulate the radio, which helped the record company. But record companies didn't have a clue because their allegiance was to the radio station with not only that artist, but their roster.
Yeah, I guess radio politics, and I remember it from my early days, was a much bigger.
Yeah.
And I know in country radio it's still a thing, and I know in pop radio it's still a thing, but clearly not nearly as big of a problem now as it used to be.
Yeah.
What's some advice from you for the next generation coming up on career longevity?
Boy, where's that crystal ball? I tell people from what I do, this is just my philosophy. And it's probably, and no one else really does this. I don't become necessarily a fan of a band, but that doesn't mean I don't love the band. My perspective on an artist has to be one from the outside looking in. I can't be patronizing a band. They have to hear reality, not what the fans and people are saying. So from a agent standpoint, it's one thing. From a promoter standpoint, it's almost the same thing. Don't be promoting, if you're starting, don't be promoting your favorite bands. Know your market, know your artist, build a base. But don't go out and lose your money because you think somebody's really good. Do your research and find out what it's worth from a promoter standpoint.
Base it on actual financial data opposed to just gut. I like the band, I'm going to throw some money at them.
Yeah. And I see that today. People they think that this business is being really, really glamorous. And it is, I guess. But it's a business, and it's not very glamorous being broke.
You have any vision for what the future holds for you and PGA?
I'm on the backside. I'm almost at number 18 right now. But I'm not taking on new talent. I have John Prine in my office who's signing. He's got some great young things that he's working with. And I'm maintaining with Chuck Lavelle, who's out with the Rolling Stones. He's been their musical director for 30-some years, and maintaining with Widespread Panic. We have a project with Mike Mills and Chuck Lavelle and Robert McDuffie, one of the top 10 solo violinists in the world, that we're going out with 16 strings. But I'm not really into developing anymore. I'm into maintaining. So for me, I'm just going to keep what I have and do what I know I can do. As long as I'm relevant.
I can't thank you enough for taking time and talking to us on Promoter 101.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you, and Promoter 101.
What an amazing interview. Thrilled to bring this level of content and information from a genius of the business, a veteran like the one and only Buck Williams.
This is Darren Lashinsky from NS2, and you're listening to Promoter 101.
The quote of the week comes to us from C.S. Lewis. Hardship often prepares ordinary people for extraordinary destiny. Kind of fucking with your mind, aren't I, Luke?
You are indeed, Dan, as did C.S. Lewis. Chronicles of Narnia. Fuck with everybody's minds a little bit.
Boom.
Promoter 101 Podcast.
With Steiny and the Pierce.
That'll do it. That's the end of our broadcast day. Thank you all for tuning in to episode 184 of Promoter 101. So glad you took the time to join us this week. Thank you to our amazing guests from Live Nation, Northern California, Jodi Goodman. Turn the tables on Steiny this week. We're looking forward to her interview coming up. And of course, our featured interview, PGA's Buck Williams. So glad to finally have him on this podcast. If you liked what they had to say, let us know. Email us at steiny@promoter101.net. It'll hit Dan and I. If you miss us, just want to catch up, let us know. We're here.
Until then, we're wishing you sold out shows for the week to come.
Cheers. Call your mother.
Hello, this is Danny Rogers calling in from Sydney for Promoter 101.
Ba-da-ba-ba.